You're not allowed to laugh at any of my jokes either. I know that'll be hard. Okay, so before we get going, a brief history. Mercedes SUVs used to have names like G and GL and ML and M-Class, the last two seemingly interchangeable. I never really understood it, to be honest, but it didn't really matter because until recently, SUVs were special interest things, like taking photographs of yourself, or if you live in or around the Newcastle area, coats. But no more. These days, loads of people habitually take pictures of themselves. Selfie. Some of those people quite normal. And the other night, I saw a lass outside a kebab shop in the big market wearing a coat. Absolutely mental. What was I saying again? Oh yeah, lots of people have SUVs now. Recognizing this, Mercedes realized that it would have to come up with a naming strategy that would work when it started churning out SUV-type cars of various shapes and sizes for the selfie-taking masses. So it came up with this. Now, I never really liked the last-gen Mercedes 4x4 stuff. I always thought that the cabins were a bit tacky and the ride quality was a bit hard, but the latest stuff is much better, and this is a really good example of it. So this car is a new thing in the UK market because its predecessor, the GLK, was never actually sold here. When it came out in 2008, Mercedes didn't think there was a market for a smaller 4x4. But today, less than a decade later, so vast is the market for 4x4 type cars that Mercedes actually does one that's smaller than this, called the GLA, and based on the A-Class. That makes this the C-Class based one, loosely, meaning the cabin's similar, as is the quality, as are the trims and all that stuff. So we've established what it's called and why. I think we have anyway. But much more important than that is the leap that Mercedes 4x4s have made in actuality. Now, I happen to love the C-Class cabin. There's just something about the simplicity of the design and the way it's put together and the material choices that they use that I just think makes it a cut above. For me, it's just classier and better looking than the stuff that Audi and BMW are doing right now in a similar price bracket. What I would say though is that it's not quite as solid as either. I mean, we're talking small degrees here, but you know, if you press this row of buttons here, there's a little creak where the panel moves. It's not really a massive deal, but you wouldn't find that in an Audi or a BMW. You would never say this was anything other than a high quality place to be. It does look and feel lovely generally. And that's pretty much the case regardless of which version you buy because they're all well equipped. Now, I don't want to get bogged down with this whole spec versus cost minefield, but as you can see here, this is one of the more expensive mid-sized premium SUV type things to start with anyway. The thing is though, unlike a lot of these things, the GLC's trim hierarchy is very easy to understand, particularly since Mercedes dropped the SE base model recently. Probably because nobody who drives a Merc likes to think of themselves as a base model kind of a person, as this belly from 1993 explains.
Mercs are quite expensive cars, and the 200 is probably really the bottom of their middle range. And I really felt that if I could just hide that, people would think I'd perhaps got a more expensive car than I really had. I took the 200E badge off the back, sort of bloke I am really.
But that's okay because of course everybody knows that Sport is the third most classiest sounding trim name behind Vanden Plas and Hawaii. And second, because there's so much stuff in this car. They're all 4x4, they all get a 9-speed auto, they all get that pleather stuff that Mercedes does that your mates will think is leather, you don't tell them. They all get many safety and driver assistance systems, they get navigation, they get big wheels, and they get heated seats. In fact, all AMG line really adds is a bit of body kit and less comfortable ride quality because of course it's on sport suspension. And in part because of all that safety stuff, and in other part because it's a big SUV, it of course gets a Euro NCAP 5-star rating. And also because it's a big SUV, the boot is massive. And a lovely electric tailgate is standard because who has the energy to open a boot these days? Here are the stats, much of a muchness between them in terms of literage, but as you can see, the Mercedes is one of the bigger ones. Also because it's an SUV, very few people will complain about the amount of space, be it head or leg, front or back. The drive is brilliant too, right? So for me, this is set up right in the sweet spot between a luxurious SUV and a really nice driving smaller hatchback. It doesn't feel too bulky from here, and it turns in really sharply and it doesn't roll too much either, so it hasn't got that sort of clunky lumbering feel that you get with most SUVs, even the slightly smaller ones like this one. It's surprisingly good fun when you're driving it with vigour. I want to say vigour. Couple of caveats, of course. The first one is that to hit that balance, you have to have a car on optional air suspension, which is one of the many options that Mercedes positively implores you to add to your GLC. Like, if you go to the configurator on the website, you'll find it's one massive page of high-priced checkboxes. Like this one, 350 quid for a little can of Febreze for the glove box. Or this one, 600 quid for an exclamation mark. And even some of the ones that say £0 are misleading, because when you click them, you find out that they're part of a package that's very expensive. So this free stereo, for example, you click that, but then you discover that you can only have it as part of the £3,000 Premium Plus package. Is that right? It is right. Anyways, this wasn't supposed to be a rant, I'm sorry. This is, after all, standard premium manufacturer stuff. What I was going to say is that to get the best ride quality out of the GLC, you're going to have to spec air suspension, which costs 1,500 quid. Although it's free if you get the AMG 43 version. That means it's tuned by Mercedes fast department, which means it does a much better impression of being a blindingly fast hatchback than most SUVs do. Saying that, the qualities that I described earlier about the sweet spot on that, they still do apply. It's just that the sporty bit is a bit more pronounced here. Well, actually a lot more pronounced. There's an even more powerful one too, which is even more specialist. So we'll move on from those now and we'll talk about the stuff that you're more likely to be thinking about buying. These ones. In a car like this, it's really the right-hand column that you want to be thinking about, albeit the petrol engine is smoother and not catastrophically uneconomical. However, these 4-cylinder diesel engines are absolutely belter. Staggeringly quiet, considering what they are, and likely to give you well above 40 miles per gallon. One thing we would say is that we would suggest that you try a 220D before you commit to a 250, which is higher powered and is quicker on paper. It's actually on the road, there's not a great deal of difference between the two of them. They've both got very similar characteristics. So loads of torque, low down, and then the sort of run out of puff from the mid-range. So if you're just going to be driving gently most of the time and you want to save yourself a few quid buying this car, we'd probably recommend going for the 220D. And so if you get a diesel, then the 40 odd grand that you'll pay and the 40 odd miles per gallon that you'll get will seem extremely reasonable. There's really not a great deal about this car to complain about, which sounds like damning it with faint praise, but I'm not. It is very, very good. So there you have it, another lovely SUV type car to choose from. Thanks for watching, and as this is probably the last video of 2017, Happy New Year! Hope you have a mint 2018. Bye! There's something